Here's a little bonus video for you on this Tuesday. This is a podcast that I did called the Random Interest Podcast. A couple of great guys. This original podcast is actually on Spotify. I'll put the link in the description below. And they were gracious enough to give me the full video to post here on my YouTube channel. So if you get a chance, go over to Spotify, follow their podcast, and a lot of interesting random stuff. And fortunately for me, they like my random type videos as well. So hopefully you enjoy this little podcast with me and the Random Interest Podcast guys.
He's the track coach at Wichita State University.
And
John,
also the host of
a host. That's right. What's the name of your YouTube channel for everyone?
Travel with a Wiseguy.
Travel with a Wiseguy. That's right. By the way, I haven't caught up with all 300 videos.
That's okay. You got plenty of time.
I've got, yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on. By the way, you're the first non-musician we've had on.
Well, I can play a tiny bit of acoustic guitar.
There you go.
I'm really bad at karaoke, but I don't mind singing.
That's
so
great.
That does not make me a musician at all.
Of course.
So I'm very honored to be the first non-musician.
And we are honored to have you because we've been waiting to get a non-musician on here.
we kind of started with what we knew.
Yeah. And we're trying to branch out because we find everything random and interesting. So, yeah, I don't even know how to start this interview. Like, you've been to so many incredible places. Like, you've gone to all these places that nobody ever gets to go. And I was just watching one where you said they blocked the town with rail cars so people from the highway couldn't see it.
That was on, I think it was on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
It was maybe Utah or something like that.
I think it was in Wyoming. Yeah.
Okay, maybe, yeah, Wyoming. There you go. And yeah, that was one where one of the things I do is I get a map, and actually I was looking just before we called, I got a Kansas. This is my gazetteer map. And
that's great.
These maps have incredible detail. And if there's a dot on it, I am curious about what it is.
That's fantastic.
And so along that Oregon Trail trip, there was a dot there, and that was all I knew. And I had done a little bit of looking up, and it was a town, it was a ghost town basically. But then I pull up and it's not there, and I'm looking around, and there's a train, and I'm like, there's a path behind it. And I just started exploring, and there you go. There are a whole bunch of old buildings kind of hidden behind these trains right along, the Oregon Trail.
That's crazy. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier this week about you, and he was saying that I think he said like 100 years ago, there were like hundreds more towns in the United States than there are now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm from Ohio originally.
Sure.
And I live in Kansas now, and it's been interesting learning about the history out here more in the West because, Ohio and East is so much older.
Sure.
In terms of the United States. Now, it's not old compared to Europe or something like that, but it's certainly older. You got things from the 1700s, and out here you don't have anything really from that time. So as the United States was moving west and exploring, there were people that were just trying to set up communities. The people know about the Oregon Trail, but a lot of times what happened is people were just generally moving west, and they would set up a community hoping a railroad would come through that community. This was before the railroads was heading west.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
And they would maybe they'd find a water source, they'd find a river or a creek or something and set up a town near that. And they would hope the railroad would come through. And then most times the railroad would go a different direction. And the only way to survive was they would move their town to where the railroad was.
That's crazy.
So there's so many ghost towns, out there. Lots of towns that there's literally nothing left because they moved the town. They literally the buildings would up and move, and some of them are, survived for a little while, or they just might have a little community of people that own land. So they still have some people that live in the general vicinity of where the town used to be. So that's all really fascinating to me. And there's just kind of I had a friend say, like, you ever going to run out of ideas or places to go? And I'm like, not in the United States. I mean, you just keep exploring and forever and find things.
That's great. So I was thinking, so I live outside of Portland. I live in a town called Hillsboro, which Hillsborough is now a very modern town, but and they've annexed other small towns as they've gotten bigger. And there's this little old town right near where I live that goes by Orenco, which is short for Oregon Nursery Company. So like 100 years ago, they built a spur line out from Portland, and this area, the only thing out here was like orchards and apple trees, and and then of course that kind of gradually went away, and the town kind of just sat there alone, decaying for a long time. But now Hillsborough has grown because there's Intel out here, and there's all sorts of businesses, and it's very interesting to me. Like we don't really have ghost towns in Western Oregon. All right, there's just been too much growth. But
a lot in Eastern Oregon, a lot of ghost towns.
Oh yeah, no, of course.
Eastern.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not going east.
Yeah, we have Shaniko, famously. That's a famous ghost town. But if you go to Orenco, you can still see the what I call the palimpsest of the old town. You can kind of see the old town that still exists around the new town that's growing up around it, and it's really cool because there's some really old buildings out there. But if you weren't like paying attention, you would just say, "Oh, those are just old houses."
Right.
Yeah.
It was I had somebody from, I think it was England, that I was messaging with, and they were saying how fortunate in the United States we are because you can still see a lot of our history, and there things are so much older that it's gone. I mean, it's
Huh.
hundreds and hundreds of years old. They're old, they do have some, really old things left there, but a lot of
The buildings are really old, but they've just kind of everything
Exactly.
they want all new.
Yeah,
So,
and so
but like, where was the guy that you were talking to?
I think he was from England, London, or something like
Oh,
that.
okay.
And he was like, when you head out to the west or something, you're just, you can still see your history, and it's still sitting there. And now it won't be there forever. Someday, a couple hundred years from now, or I don't know how long it'll be gone, but
Not much longer
probably not. And that's
from the looks
for
of where you're
me.
going.
Yeah, for me, definitely. I get to some of these places and think, well, 20 years, this might be not here anymore. So,
That's crazy.
but yeah, it's been a fun journey for the last. I started the YouTube channel about 4 years ago out of just kind of certainly out of fun when COVID started, and our
That's a
track season got
Going
canceled.
to places where no people are during
That's
COVID.
Yeah,
that's
that's exactly
that's genius.
that's exactly right.
Perfect.
Our season got canceled. Everything got canceled here at the university, and
Yeah.
we are, coaches just travel. That's what we do. We recruit, we compete, and we travel all the time. And I was dying just not doing anything. So I just thought, well, where could I go? Well, I'll just go. I went to like Montana. That was my first. I just drove to Montana, and there's no one. Went
I
to the
love
middle of
Montana.
nowhere, and so
I love that place.
that's how it got started.
Another thing we have working against us, not like you said, Eastern Oregon's different, but here in Western Oregon, the very few places we have left, the weather is working against the buildings because it's very wet here, right? The snow is very heavy in the Cascades. So even places where there were old mining towns, there was this amazing mining town down, if you go down to the Willamette Valley, south of Eugene, there's a town called Cottage Grove. And if you head east from there, you head up into the Cascades, there was an old mining town up there called Bohemia City. And they had like a post office, and they had like a hotel, and they had a bunch of homes, and all sorts of, it's all gone, right? The only thing there now are like the mines, like the openings to the mines.
Right.
And you go, they do have like a historical society over in Cottage Grove, and they have like these really old grainy, daguerreotypes and photos of Bohemia City. And one of the things that struck me about it is like a lot of those people look pretty happy. Because the stereotype, like the Hollywood stereotype, like you pull into a dusty Western town, right, and everybody's miserable, right, and they go into the
Dust Bowl
saloon
picture.
and like. So yeah, I think there's a lot of history that you get to see that I don't think most people even think of.
Yeah, and I'm not. So I'm actually before this, interview or whatever podcast. I was on a call with my family because we're going to go to Hawaii in October. I'm going to turn 50 in October, and so 50th. I've been to all 48 states, contiguous states, and then I'm going to Alaska, which is the 49th state. I'm going there, in July, and then 50 on my birthday in
There you
Hawaii,
go.
50th state. So
You're
we're
missing the same
talking.
two I am.
Yeah, there you go. I'm gonna be too ahead of you. I don't know what you're doing the next couple months. Um,
You're way ahead
but
of me.
but we were talking, and as we were trying to figure out our itinerary in Hawaii and just naming some places to go. And I go, hey guys, just so you know, I'm not interested in the touristy spots, and that's kind of how I am. Now we're gonna go see, you know, um, the things you got to see if you've never been to Hawaii. We're gonna see Pearl Harbor, and we're gonna
Of
do
course.
those kind of things. But generally, I'm gonna try to go somewhere there's gonna not be that many people,
Huh.
and some historical places that aren't as well documented. The things I've done on my channel are interesting. I've done some videos about popular places, and they get less views than videos about places that no one knows anything about.
Yeah.
So there's a fascination out there. I put up a video, it was about Woodson County, Kansas, and it's 3,000 people in the entire county. And I
That's
just
insane.
started driving around, and most of the video is of places that, there was one town in the whole like 30-minute video of maybe there was about 100 people there. It got like 40 something thousand views. And I mean, the view to population ratio was totally out of whack, and then I'll put a video up about, Cincinnati, Ohio, and it'll get 1,000 views compared to, a million people that live there.
That's
So
funny. Well, I gotta say, I've been like, the further away you go, I'm like, I gotta watch this again. Like I think I really liked your, I loved your episode about Loving County. And it's, how do you say it? Mentone? Is that the name of the
yeah,
town?
Mentone. Yeah, Mentone it's the county seat. It's unincorporated. There's no
Yeah.
incorporated towns. There's 64 people in the entire county. It's the
I,
smallest or the
that's,
least populated county in
That's
all of the United
insane.
States.
so how do they go shopping?
Yeah, so I had
Wow.
in that video, I had a little interview with the guy that ran the uh, restaurant in town.
Oh, the
And
barbecue guy?
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
was great. Yeah, I love that. That
And
was fantastic.
and he lives in a different town. He doesn't live there because there's not that many people there. And so there's towns within 30 minutes or so,
Huh.
that's the way it goes in places like that. It's an oil, community.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
about the
Yeah.
oil industry. And so it's a busy community. It's a busy county. There's just
Hmm.
trucks all the time, and
Yeah, you said, yeah,
oil
I remember
fields as
that.
far as you can see, but yeah, there's just not very many people living there. So fascinating. And I see that, and I had I like country music, and so there was a country song about Loving
Oh,
County.
that's right. You're right. You
Yeah.
mentioned
And
that. That's
that
great.
was and I just one day I go, well, what's this Loving County? I look it up, and whoa, it's the least populated county. I'm gonna keep just note. I have a note in my 50 notes in my phone about places I want to go. And
That's
sure
crazy.
enough, I was in Texas, and I thought I'm gonna drive over to West Texas and go see what this place is all about.
That's so great.
And
I
it
always,
and
I,
and really and truly, it was a video that did really, really well. You just never know if a video will do well or not. It could get 1,000 views, and ended up getting like 300,000 views. And
I've watched it 3 times.
there you go. And it's without you, it would have been 297 or 99,997.
That's great. And I thought one thing that I have never considered before, when you were talking about Loving County and you gave the history of the name, and like it was different counties at different times, right? And then it had a population, and the population is gone. Like that's really great history to find out about, because I don't know anything about it, right? I'll drive through a small town, I'll be like, this place.
Right. Yeah.
You
What a
know?
piece of crap little town.
Yeah, what a piece of, yeah, I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
But I mean, that I don't know. I think it's very interesting what you do.
So I grew up in a farm community in
Mhm.
Ohio, and the towns that I show are places like that I grew up around. So I know the type of people that live there, and I was one of those
Yeah.
people.
I
So
grew up on
I
a
know,
farm too.
yeah, and so they're good people, and I've never tried to start a town before, so I got all respect for people that tried to start a town. I can
Hey, you
imagine
know
what
what I'm
that
gonna
would.
do? I'm gonna start a
Yeah.
town.
Exactly. I mean, that's what people did.
All of my ancestors were lazy. We just stayed on the East Coast. We're like, we had the boat. We were on the boat. We're
I,
not
I'm
going.
from Detroit.
We traveled enough. Yeah,
Detroit, that might be a ghost town someday. Who knows?
It's a ghost town now. It's effectively a ghost town. I wouldn't recommend it.
I've been to Detroit many times. I went to college in Northeast Ohio, so we drive over to Windsor. We go right through
Nice.
Detroit all
Oh,
the time.
sure, sure. So I lived in Ohio. I lived in Austinburg, Ohio for 3 years.
Austinburg, where was that?
Yeah, it's near it's near Ashtabula, near the
Okay.
Pennsylvania border.
I know Austin town,
No,
but I didn't know
Austinburg.
Austinburg. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Cool.
talk about an out of the way place.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
Ashtabula, that's way up there. You're
way,
almost in New York.
way. That's on the lake.
Yeah, you're up by
Yeah,
Niagara Falls almost.
yeah, pretty much. And it was
So
not, it wasn't great.
I went to Kent State, so not
Oh,
that far. Yeah.
yeah, not that far. Wow, crazy.
Mhm.
I was just watching your episode where you go through, I want to say US 50,
Hmm.
and you end up in Salida.
Yeah, Colorado.
Yeah, you end up in Salida, Colorado, where it's got the S on the hill, and you go up that hill with the overview, right?
Hmm.
You park and you get up to the shelter, and that just brought back so many memories for me because I remember when I was younger, driving through Montana and Wyoming, and parts of Idaho, and even parts of Eastern Oregon, where every town you drove into had that kind of feel to it. Like it was always like there was a butte with a giant letter on it. It was usually the football team or the high school,
the
right? And that's like
mascot up there.
it's such a Western thing that you only see that kind of like in the Intermountain West,
Right.
I think. And I just love that. And Salida that's a great looking town.
Yeah, that was I didn't know anything about that. So it was a spiral little path to get up
Yeah,
to the
like
top there.
Tenderfoot Hill or something like that.
Yeah, you could drive a part of it, and then I was like, "Oh, I can't drive it the whole way. I gotta have to walk for a while." And yeah, it was a really great town. It was actually the town is really cool. But I drive, and then I hike up to the top, and my idea, the ending of that video is a drone shot
Yeah,
of that whole thing,
it was great.
and
It was
it
great.
was about 50-mile-an-hour wind, and I'm sitting up there, and the wind is just howling, and I'm like, I'm gonna lose my drone here. I'm just gonna like take it up. It's gonna go flying off, and
You
I
know,
luckily have a really good drone. And
I didn't even think, I just watched it and I didn't even think of that because you made a comment about the wind right before that. And I
Yeah.
see the drone goes up. I was like, oh, that's beautiful.
yeah, yeah, that would be more the behind the scenes video if I did something like
The
that. But
making of.
I was powering that thing and landing it because there's nowhere. It was just nowhere to put it. So it was literally like landing it in my hand, trying
That's
to like
crazy.
the
That's
thing.
that's
Yeah.
that's some good control right there.
Yeah, I am a certified drone pilot, so
Oh,
got some
there's a
I've developed
certification
some
for that.
skills. There's a little
That's
certification
true.
for that.
By the way, I kind of feel like that drone angle that you do gives your channel like a whole kind of different feel. It's more like it pulls you in a little bit more, right? It gives you more of the lay of the
Yeah.
land. And you look
Yeah,
around, you're like, these places are out in the middle of nowhere.
yeah, yeah. You kind of can see the whole town. Really and truly, you can see the whole town.
Yeah,
The
amazing.
towns that I go to. And so I've had a lot of people comment about that. And I just thought having a drone was cool when I first got it. And I wasn't thinking like it would give a perspective on a town like that. But yeah, I know there's a lot. I've watched other videos, and they get to a town, and I'm always wondering, well, I wonder what it looks like as a whole, how it's pieced together, and so the drone I feel like has really made my channel look better than it probably should, because it's a really nice feature that I've got a buddy that works here on campus at the TV station, and he's like, he's a little bit older than me, and he worked for television for a long time, and he's like, the amount of effort we would have had to do in like the 1990s to get that shot that you have to get an airplane, or
For sure.
to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
some sort of shot, and
Or
now
a
you can
helicopter.
A
yeah,
helicopter,
exactly.
Or like a
And
steady cam.
yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's just the technology is amazing. I just do everything on my iPhone, and I have a drone.
It looks great. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it looks great.
So yeah, and then I did purchase a GoPro this year, so I
Oh
haven't used
yeah,
that much.
Ooh.
I have 3 cameras now.
that's great. One of the places you went to that I really liked for some reason that you said you couldn't find any history about was Wendover, Wyoming,
Mhm.
right? And it looked like there was a river or a pond, or like it looked like there was a water supply there.
It was on the railroad. It's interesting that you asked that. So man, you were really watching. That's certainly watching some videos there.
Well,
But
I was
yeah,
it was that was great. That looked like a great place.
it was along the Oregon Trail, or it was right near the Oregon Trail. So that was
Sure.
the trip I was on, and I took like a little side trip. and it was a road that went in and you had to drive back out. It was like
Oh,
a
right. You
50-mile
said that.
road and it didn't go anywhere. And that's where it ended. So I go there and it has like some old railroad buildings that were abandoned, and you could tell it was, and the train went through actually while I was there, so it was still active railroad. And then I didn't know anything about it. I really tried to find anything I could, and there was like a Wendover, like something about the railroad that I found, but nothing about the town. So then I put that video up, and then someone emailed me a detailed history about Wendover. So I put it in the description of the video.
Oh,
So
I
if you
forgot.
go
I
back to
didn't
that
see that.
video,
Yeah.
there's a whole long thing about the history of the Wendover town. And so I've often now got to the point where I say, hey, I don't know anything about this place. If anybody out there does, let me know. I'll put it in the description of this video. And so
That's
I
amazing.
get a lot of responses from people that give the history, because a lot of times there's just no history online of some of these places. There might be in a book somewhere, or just a local that lived there, that's the only history you can have and or you can find. So sometimes
Yeah,
those places, especially way out west, there's nothing online. Like Kansas is pretty good. Some places around here, there's a lot of websites now that are doing a good job of getting their history online, but there's some places out there, there's just nothing unless you know somebody that lived there, what the history
A
was.
100 years ago.
Right.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. I was gonna say if there's other people out there that wanted to do what you're doing, or at least go out and visit these places, what are their best resources when they get there,
Yeah,
or if
so
there are any resources?
I try to do some research before I leave. So
Mhm.
this weekend, actually, I'm going to go on a little 2-day trip through a county up in the middle of Kansas. And I printed out, like there's a town called Barnard, Kansas. So I print out a little Wikipedia page, but I also found some other information about it. But I have a whole stack of stuff about, the county and all the little communities in it that I could find. And so that just gives me a little base of information. And so I'll arrive to a place. I'll have maybe a little bit of notes, but I haven't really even read the notes, because
Right.
you can really get them confused or just muddied in your head if you read too much about all these little places and you go to a whole bunch of places. So I'll pull up to it, I'll pull out my note, I'll read it. Oh, okay, well, it's interesting. There's a school from 1895 that's in this town or something like that, or some kind of. And so then I'll just start exploring the town, and sure enough, I'll learn something. I'll see something I didn't know. Maybe I'll get on Google. Here's a building. I'll Google it or something like that. And sometimes you run into a person there, and and when you're just literally walking around with an iPhone looking at buildings, people are going to, hey, what are you doing? And when they find out that you're literally a tourist for their little place, they think it's the
Yeah.
coolest thing in the world, and they'll tell you all about their town, and they'll tell you, sometimes I can get stopped for hours when on a conversation, because people have never had someone come and try to explore their community before. So usually people find it cool, and you find out information that way. And then sometimes you just don't find anything, and that's
Right.
okay too. That's just kind of the way it goes.
Do you have
Yeah.
any like harrowing stories that aren't on camera?
The
Probably.
so I've had, I don't know if they were near death experiences, but before I was actually, I did a lot of international travel before I started the
Mm.
YouTube page. And
Yeah,
uh,
me too.
I was in Easter Island. No, no, no.
Mm.
Let's see. I did go to Easter Island, but I was in Iceland. So I was in
Oh, okay.
Iceland, and I
Hmm.
had rented a camper van, and I just slept in the camper van for like a week. And I was way on the eastern side of Iceland, and I was no one anywhere for hours. And you drive for hours, you just don't see anybody. And it
Yeah.
was your beautiful road. It's called Ring Road that goes around Iceland, and it's one main road. And then there's little ones you can take off, dirt roads and stuff like that. And so I was like, I've been having a mountain here and the ocean here for hours, and I need something else. So there was a road that went off, kind of a shortcut on my map, that would go up through kind of the mountains a little bit. Okay, you know what? I'll try it. So I turn off, it becomes a dirt road, and there's a sign as I'm going up, and it says, it's like a truck on an incline, and it says 17 and a little like degree. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a 17-degree incline. That's not bad. Like I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, that's okay. I didn't realize it meant 17 kilometers is what actually the sign meant. That it's going to be going
Oh.
like this for
Oh.
17 kilometers.
Oh
And
no.
so as the road was certainly going higher than 17 degrees, and I start to get in the clouds. Like I'm literally driving into the clouds, and or fog, I guess you would probably call it. Felt like I was in the clouds, and I can't see 5 feet in front of me, and I'm looking off to the left out my window, and it's just a straight drop off,
Wow.
and
Oh God.
so I'm like, I feel like I'm on a road mile into the air where either way it would fall off either side. I mean, obviously in my head I was exaggerating it, but so I'm literally going 5 miles an hour for hours because I can't turn around. There's nowhere to like back up and maneuver. I just have to continue going
Just
forward
like
unless I go straight back. Yeah, and I'm like this,
white
and
knuckling it.
then I finally there's a little parking area I get to, and I'm like, oh, whew. Okay. So I get there, I turn into the parking area, and there's a car that I'm trying to look through the fog, and I drive over there. It is an abandoned car with no wheels or anything like that on
Oh
it.
God.
I'm like, this was
Of
the last
course.
vehicle that tried to go this way, obviously. And so then I get back on the path, and I'm another 30 minutes, and I finally evens out, and the fog kind of, goes out of the way. And then it opens up to like the most beautiful Icelandic image you could imagine coming
Oh
down
my
through the
God.
mountains into, this area. So
Wow.
it was totally worth it, but I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
But I've had like, in terms of the small town stuff, one thing that I never published. I don't know if I've ever talked about this. So I
Hmm.
was in Missouri, and I was actually walking down a river, and I found it was to where there was a ghost town, and there was an old building,
Yeah.
but there was also like a new building there. And so I'm just kind of walking around, and there's nobody there. But I had walked a couple miles down a river just to get there. And turns out I was on private property, but I didn't even know it. So I did not know. It was
Yeah.
totally innocent. And I'm flying my drone, and I'm inside like an old barn. I'm inside the barn, and the drone is flying, and I'm taking a little video, and I was going to get out of there. And here comes somebody driving up, but they don't know I'm
Oh
there.
man.
Oh
They have
no.
no idea that I'm there. And so,
Yeah,
um,
that sounds dice.
yeah. And so then I'm just like, well, what do I do? Do I just run out and go, hey, you know what I mean? And he immediately was with a guy, and they went into this building, and they were unloading something. And I'm like, I guess if I just sit here for like, and
No.
Quietly.
my drone is up in the air. My drone is up in the sky.
That's
And I'm
crazy.
like, it's only got, it'll fly for about 25 minutes before the battery's gonna, die.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm just sitting in there, and I'm debating what to do. And in the middle of debating what I'm gonna do, they end up coming back out and leave. So, and I'm like, okay, I I land the drone, pack it away, because I was gonna do a whole episode, like a ghost town segment about this town. I hadn't done any type of talking about it. And then I just packed up, and I walked right down the driveway, which they drove out, and just to kind of be like way out in the open. Cause I don't try to hide. I'm like, I'm just out here
Right. Right.
exploring. And then I just hopped over a fence that I probably shouldn't have been, around. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I didn't quite know what to do. And
Hmm.
I I try not, I don't trespass. I don't, go in places I
Right.
shouldn't. And
Well, if you
that
didn't get a call from the FBI, it's probably fine.
exactly.
Yeah. You're good.
So there
You
is a
ever
Missouri
see anything you
video.
shouldn't have with the drone? Like,
What was that?
you ever see anything you shouldn't have with the
Oh
drone?
no, I'm so far away. It's always wide shots and things like that.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So it's really, I did
Yeah.
one guy one time. I had a fascination early on in the YouTube channel for water towers. And so I would make water tower videos, because they have like Kansas has in these places I hear for some really cool water towers. And so I'd just go around, and if there's a water tower, I'd fly the drone, fly it around the water tower, and make like a compilation of water towers.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I got to this little town. I'm standing in the middle of the town. I'm not trying to hide. I'm just in the middle of town flying a drone to get this cool water tower. And a guy comes out like thinking I was spying on him, you know.
Yeah,
And he chewed me out, even though I was like, hey, here's my card. Like, you can look this up. He didn't care, but he thought I was spying on him. So that's kind of the end of my water tower
Deep
videos.
state.
All right, all right. So this makes me, that story where you were like the guys came, that now I'm starting to connect the dot where you were in this other town in Wyoming. You're like, there's a house over there, and I'm alone, and I'm not going inside of it.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I've been around some of those that, man, you could step in it, and just the floor would go out, or you're all by yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
if I was with someone, I might have a little more, might be a little more brave, but I'm usually by myself, so I got
That's
to be
probably
smart.
very smart.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
be crushed under a building if it was me.
yeah. I see some of these videos where people do crazy stuff, and I'm like, maybe when I was 20,
Yeah.
but going on 50, I'm not interested in that. I'm good.
Well, I watch these guys. They do because you have the one about the abandoned mall,
Hmm.
and I see these guys going into these abandoned hospitals or whatever the hell they are, and I'm like, you're nuts. That building is not structurally sound.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it.
for sure.
it
If I ever go into an old building, I am making sure the ground is solid, and
yeah,
I've
I'd
got
be
the
dead.
longest selfie stick you could imagine, so I can make it look like I'm inside the building when I'm standing outside the building if I need to.
Ah,
So,
I think I've seen
um,
that a couple times.
yeah. So yeah, those are crazy. I probably would, like I said, I probably would have done that when I was younger, but at this point, I'm
Yeah,
good.
I would have too. Not anymore. I'm happy here.
I
I'm
did that
happy
when I
next to
was younger.
I'm happy with my piano, and I'll just stay
Luckily, there
here.
wasn't YouTube and Instagram 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things about your channel is it gives me the opportunity to armchair travel, right? Because in order for me to get to where you are, that's like a 2 day drive from here.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
really far.
and I get most of my YouTube has these really detailed analytics about who watches and all the different statistics, and
Oh,
it's
right,
crazy.
yeah.
And so you look at the demographics, and the largest demographic for me is 65 and older. And then the next largest is 54 or 55 to 64, and then on it's exactly a perfect,
Weird.
line. Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of the people in that age group say the same thing, because you get to a point where you're not able to travel because you're getting older, or you
Yeah,
don't have the means to, or
or you
and
just don't want to.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It takes internet to do that. And so I get lots and lots of comments from people like that I would have loved to go to this place. I dreamed about going to this place, but now I got to go there, kind of, in your videos.
So
Awesome.
I think from Salida, I think if you take a right and head north, you end up in a Park
Yes.
County, Colorado, right? Which is where South Park.
I did a whole video about that.
You did. I didn't see that
Yes.
one. Yeah, yeah.
So
Where the guy bulldozed the town.
yeah. Yeah. So actually,
Yeah,
I in the US 50 trip, I took about a 4-day break right there, and I went to Breckenridge, and which
of
is north of
course.
Park County. And
Yeah.
I had some coworkers that we all met up there. So actually, the trip, it was a 2-part trip really. And but previously I'd been to Breckenridge before, and we had gone down, and I'd read about the town. I'm trying to remember what the name of the town was, but there was South Park City within the town. It's this old Western town. So I was like, I'll make a video about that. And yeah, so there's a South Park themed thumbnail.
Area. Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
well, but on my channel, there's a South Park themed, like there's all the South Park characters and all
Oh,
that
I
kind of
didn't see
stuff.
that.
And
That's
so
great.
yeah, so
Oh,
that's
and
what.
Go to the crazy restaurant.
I didn't get to
The one
watch
where
it.
what's it called? Where the people dive off the cliff and everything.
In
What?
South Park?
Yeah, it's near South Park. There's like
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
um
What's the name of it? Yeah.
oh God,
I haven't been there, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Wait,
They
what
had
is
made a whole
this?
episode about Cartman wanting to go there.
yeah. Cartman wanted to go to
Oh,
this,
I have to look that up.
and it's a real restaurant. They actually reopened it.
Oh, you
Trey
mean
Parker and
Casa
Matt
Bonita?
Stone.
There it
Yeah,
is.
Casa Bonita.
Casa Bonita.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got that.
I have not
Um,
been there.
Yeah, and also you went to. By the way, I used to live in Boulder, so that like the Colorado episodes, I was like, I know exactly where that is, right? And Leadville, I don't think that people have an appreciation of Leadville. Like that's very high up, and it's in a narrow valley,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like 10,172 feet or something like that.
Yeah, it's like the highest city in the
Yeah,
United States or something, and there's
yeah,
all the different claims of what a city is or a town, and
yeah. Like
what the
you can't
highest one
bake
is.
bread there.
Yeah, but I went there when I was on that trip when I was in Breckenridge. I just took a day trip over there. It was awesome, and I could have spent a week there. Talk about ghost towns like Colorado and all the
Oh my
mine
God,
areas.
All
everywhere.
the little mining towns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Leadville had within a few miles. There's a dozen ghost towns basically
Yeah,
right
of
there.
course.
So I could have definitely someday I go back and explore more of the outer parts of Leadville and all those little ghost towns. It
Yeah,
was
and
awesome.
You know,
It was great
Colorado gives you the advantage of having the most beautiful backdrop in
for
the
sure.
world, like with all the Rocky Mountains and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
it
pretty
was
great.
a lot of fun. I always enjoy Colorado.
That's
Do
great.
people request you now? Like
Requests like
request
you
a
need to go
town? They're
somewhere.
like, I live in this crazy
Yeah.
town. Like,
Yeah, I get that all the time, and they'll say because I've been starting to do like counties, like entire
hmm,
counties, and they'll say, "Hey, can you come to my county?" Or here's a county, and most people don't realize I have a full-time job, so it's kind of like if I have a couple days, I'll go maybe a weekend, but I'm limited to where I live here. And then in
right.
the summer, I'll take some trips. I'll have some time, and maybe at the winter break, I have some time. But yeah, so I'd love to go to a lot of the places people suggest. I'm just not able to get there from Wichita, Kansas all the time very quickly.
Sure, sure.
I love
Yeah,
that shirt, by the way.
This
Wichita.
see
one?
it. Wichita, that's pretty great. Oh,
Yeah.
and you know, another one I love that you did, I don't know why I watched it, but it was like pros and cons of Kansas. I was like, pros?
I
I was
love
like,
living in Kansas. It's
I
great.
can tell. I can tell. But I'm just like, is really?
The
Pros?
pros and cons of Oregon would be really interesting. That'd be a heck
Oh,
of a
well,
Yeah. Seriously.
I don't know
I
about
live in
that.
Texas. We don't
Yeah,
need.
no, forget it. But
okay.
I love you made one comment that I thought was particularly funny. You're like, oh, the weather here is challenging.
Yeah,
Very
it's
windy.
everything and often in the same day. Everything in the same day.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
yeah.
wind, I've just gotten used to the wind. Ohio's not as windy of a place. I did Kent State. It's kind of windy up there on the lake. You get that lake effect.
Sure.
Yeah.
And but here it's windy. You just kind of end up getting used to it over time. It's weird. Like if you live in Canada, you get used to the cold. It's
Yeah.
just
Yep.
and so you end up getting used to the wind. So I prefer it's a sunny place and it's similar to Texas in a lot of ways. We're right at the edge. Wichita is a little different than Kansas City, actually, where the
Mhm.
Wichita
I've
weather
been
is
to
more
Kansas
like
City. I haven't been to Wichita though.
yeah, so the Wichita weather is more like Oklahoma, Texas. It's just colder. But it's sunny.
Hmm.
The
Mhm.
Kansas City weather is more like, St. Louis, like,
Yeah.
that kind of weather. And we're
Yeah.
just kind of Kansas is kind of split that way when you look at it. And so
And
Wichita's a ton out.
when you say windy, it's windy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's not just like your hat flying off. It's like leaning
so
in.
the funny thing is on the weather apps, when you look on your phone, it'll have like if it's windy or not, it'll have like the little icon.
They'll have
Yeah.
the
Most
gusts.
places it gets like if it's like above 10 miles an hour, it'll say like windy.
Right.
In here in Kansas, it won't say windy until it's above 20 miles an hour. If it's like 15, that is not windy out here.
Nah,
People don't even,
The slight
that's windy.
breeze.
That's
yeah,
windy.
most places, yeah.
15 miles
And
an hour is windy.
but yeah, most people here, not until it gets about 20, 25 do they feel like it's very windy. A little breezy today, 20 miles an hour breeze.
That's insane. And like like the weather in Oregon, I don't know if you've been here, but like the weather in Western Oregon, it tends to be like in like this I call them the shoulder seasons, like spring and fall. You have to have like 5 raincoats.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have like the light raincoat, the windbreaker, the medium raincoat, the fisherman's raincoat. Like
Well,
Yeah,
it only rains once there for 9 months.
oh, come on, that's not true.
Is.
Yeah, I've been to
Mostly true.
Oregon. I've been to
I've
Oregon
lived
quite a
there.
bit. I mean, besides like I did the Oregon Trail, but I've been to Eugene a bunch for track meets,
Mm.
Town USA. And so
I lived there for a long time.
yeah, and so hopefully I'll be there in a few weeks at the national championships and the Olympic trials, later this summer is there. So hopefully we have some athletes qualify. But so I've been to Eugene, then we'll drive out to the coast, if we have kind of a free day and explore some things. I'll take some kids in a van and we'll go see what all that kind of stuff's like. It's really beautiful out there. But when I did the Oregon Trail, I really fell in love with the eastern part of Oregon.
Yeah,
So wide open, and that's more like it feels like Kansas almost in a lot of ways. Or
it's gorgeous out there.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
It's
great.
very
So I
pretty.
really, it's like two different states in one.
So I had a buddy that he moved from Queens to San Diego a few years ago, and so we went through Texas, and we got west of we didn't fill up in San Antonio, which turned out to be a huge mistake, and I don't know where the hell we were. We were out in the middle of nowhere, and I think we were near a town called Fort Kendrick or something, and we're like, we're in trouble, like we're in trouble here. Like, and we went, there was a town on the map. We had an atlas like the one you have. and we drove to this town, and it looked like something out of a Jim Jarmusch film. Like there were people that clearly lived there. It was like, what, what, how do they fill up their, like, there's not, like, there's miles, miles and miles and miles. Like, where do you go for fruit? Like, what if you run out of Cheerios? Is it like a 2-day trip to Costco in Dallas?
Well, there's a sign that says like, this is the last exit for gas for the next
We ignored it.
however 100
Yeah, we
something
ignored
miles.
that. Yeah, we
Yeah,
ignored that.
don't ignore that.
But I was going to try to make 2 points. I have a picture of it, and I looked at your pictures of Wyoming, and I was like, if you drop me off in one of these places, I couldn't tell you if I was in West Texas or if I was in Wyoming or somewhere in between.
Right.
Like they all kind of look. A lot of those places look the same.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And on US, I did the US 50 last summer, and there's stretches of 100 miles where there's no gas. It'll say last stop for 100 miles,
That's
and there's
insane.
nothing. And yeah, I was in San Antonio. I got back. I was there Sunday. We had a track meet down there. So
Oh, there you go.
nice.
we drove over one of our free nights. A couple of us drove over to Lukenbach.
Oh
and
no.
had some live music with about 20 other people, listening to some good old music in Lukenbach. It was great.
No, I
That's
don't know
awesome.
that. Tom, you must know that place.
Yeah. There's
Have you never
songs
heard the
about it. Come
song?
on. Yeah,
Yeah,
Lukenbach, Texas. It's Willie Nelson and
No. No, I feel
um,
like a moron. I should know it.
Well,
it's like all famous country singers.
Ah,
So
that's
Luken,
crazy.
and in fact, I actually spent not this previous, or the most recent New Year, but the New Year before that, I actually spent it in Lukenbach. I was on it was the same trip. I was in Loving County and in all those places. I just did a Christmas, New Year's kind of driving around Texas.
Nice.
And I said, well, New Year's in a ghost town. That sounds great, because Lukenbach is a ghost town, but they still have the dance hall, and they have music every night of the year. And it was a New Year's Eve party in Lukenbach, and I made a little video about that. But yeah, Waylon Jennings recorded the famous Lukenbach song, and all these famous country singers have sang there. It's just really
That's
historic
very
place for
cool.
country music.
I
Yeah.
didn't-
Really
I forgot it
beautiful.
was Waylon.
It's in Hill Country, Texas.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah, there's lots of I live in Austin. There's hill country right outside. And there's like one of my friends got married in a ghost town outside of Austin. It was funny too, because when we were leaving, there were police sitting outside of the ghost town, like watching people leave, because apparently they have it every weekend, and it's a drunken
Yeah, well,
yeah. So there are two cops that are from that town or from that area.
Yeah.
That's what they do every Saturday night, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in, like I said, I grew up in some places like that, and I've been to many gatherings on just back, middle of a farm somewhere, just in
Yeah.
a barn. You know what I mean? That's just
Oh,
what
yeah.
you do.
me too. I have been there.
I toured the country as in rock bands, and I've been all over and we didn't get to see as much as I wanted, but like going through some things, you're just driving for hours and hours and hours
Yeah.
of nothing,
That's right.
Yeah.
But,
Well, that's an interesting life. I mean, that's a different way to travel and see things. I
Oh yeah.
relate that to being a coach, because we drive on a bus or a plane, and we get, so
Yeah.
you don't really get to explore. But I listen to,
All the tracks look the same.
yeah. And so I do listen to some comedians podcasts. I'm a comedy fan, and I hear some of these guys that are
Nice.
Well, you're in the right
interested.
place.
Yeah, there you go. And I hear some of these guys they're like, they've started going a day early or staying a day so they can actually explore some of the places they go. And because when you're in a band, or if you're a comedian, you're literally just hotel to hotel, and you sleep in all day, and you
But
just get up and go.
Yeah, you can't really, like, you'll have 15 days in a row and then one day off, and you've got to make that day count for something.
Sometimes you want to
Hopefully
rest.
sleep.
Sometimes you just want to take a break and sleep.
Yeah, sleep.
I saw David Cross recently, and he actually made a crack about that. He's like, when I'm on tour, I don't even know where I am half the time. He's like, because I go from the airport to the hotel, and they all look the same. Like, everything looks the same, and I step out on the street, and all the downtowns look the same, and I don't know where I am.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
he's a perfect candidate for, like, come in early.
For sure. Yeah, and that's one of the great things about what I'm doing, is that I try to stay at classic hotels, even though they're maybe not quite as nice as the Marriott or something. I
Yeah.
just booked a hotel in it's the only hotel in the entire county this weekend that where I'm going.
Mm.
And I looked on the map and it's got like 5 rooms. It's an old brick,
Oh,
stone
crazy.
building. And it's like $59 a night. And it's like, oh, that's where I'm staying.
That
And
sounds great.
yeah, and so
Oh,
if you're low
And
maintenance, that kind of stuff, you remember those places. I've stayed in 1,000 Hiltons and track and field trips. And I don't remember any of them, but I
right.
remember
yeah.
the Oregon Trail Motel in Baker, Oregon. You know what I mean? I remember that night. So
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I was just about to ask that. I think there was a couple that just reopened a hotel out that way, where it's just exactly what you described. It's like a 12-room
mhm.
old hotel, like Western style hotel, and I mean, it doesn't look like the Hilton, and I still think it's $59 a night, but it looks amazing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's hard for those places to stay in business
Yeah,
because it's tough. But Route 66 is an example of, that's a place where these hotels have survived because it's like that's what you do when you travel on Route 66. And so it'd be great, whether it's the Oregon Trail or US 50, if there's just a way to make that more of the experience, like staying in these places are part of the trip. And, I
yeah.
don't know how that works, whether it's some sort of there's an organization that's government funded or something like that where it helps those
Not a
things,
bad idea.
but
Yeah.
the Route 66 is literally true. Like these towns and these cities have funding from places to help keep those things alive, and then it eventually becomes what you want to do, and they end up making money. So, yeah, it'd be great to keep some of these old roads alive, so that people can drive down the 2-lane roads and enjoy them still.
Yeah, some of that Route 66 stuff. I didn't get to watch all of it, obviously, but it was pretty good. Like,
That was the
That's
first time. That
awesome.
was the first trip that I documented. So it's probably my worst series that I did because it was like the first. I literally didn't know what I was doing. I didn't when I started the trip. I didn't know how I was even going to do, or
oh yeah,
So
well, I enjoyed it.
it's
I enjoyed
it's
it.
way less technical than some of the other ones that I've done, and
Yeah.
How far out do you plan these?
well, it depends on the trip. Like literally, the one I'm going to do this weekend, I was before this podcast, I was working on it.
Oh,
Um, so I'm, just literally getting started. Um, I'm going to Alaska in 6 weeks. I have not planned much at all
Wow.
except for I have my flight, I have a rental, and that's about it. So I got 6 weeks to figure out what I'm doing. Um, so if I'm gonna go on a road trip, like if I'm gonna take 2 weeks and drive on a road trip, I kind of have I try to have goals of where I want to stay so I make progress throughout the trip. So I'm like, hey, I've got to get to this town. That's where the hotel is going to be. And then once I get that kind of figured out, I can take all the way up until the trip starts researching. So I can take
mhm.
2 months
Oh yeah. Yeah.
working on that kind of stuff, trying to figure it out. And then I just know, well, on this day I'm staying in this town, and this day I'm staying in this town. And usually I get over ambitious. I try to do too much in one day. So I've
Yeah.
gotten better. I'll take rest days here and there, or I'll make the trips a little bit shorter because
Sure.
it's easy for me to get to a place, especially in the early morning, and just spend way too much time in one place because I'm just fascinated by what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but then I'm like, oh, wait, I have 37 other places I wrote down that I want to go today. I need to get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been
I get
there.
it. I get
Definitely.
it. All right. I think this has been fun.
Yeah. That
Awesome.
was great.
Easy
That's
Yeah.
all. Is there
conversation.
anything you'd like to promote?
Oh,
Um,
I
Uh,
don't think so.
I don't think so. He's at the track.
well, yeah.
Oh,
Well, obviously the YouTube channel, but that's kind of inherent in it, I guess. But
I've been doing a lot of other stuff. So in the description of the more recent videos, I have like a website where I have a newsletter where I'll do some like kind of behind the scenes stuff. So if somebody's, is free, you just sign up for the newsletter. I kind of talk about where I'm going, trips maybe something that happened, or just more like stuff about the YouTube channel.
hmm.
Uh,
inner workings.
analytics and things like that. People that are really some people are just interested in how YouTube works.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
so
All
there's a
right. Very
newsletter
nice.
there. Yeah, I mean, I have a little tiny little merch store that I started just to experiment with, people would
Oh
say,
yeah.
hey, can I buy a t-shirt? Or you know, stuff like that. So I do this later this summer. I'm hoping to do some expanding of the channel a little bit, but I'm not quite ready to announce it yet. So, but yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on,
Yeah,
and it's been a lot
absolutely.
of fun chatting with you guys.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
really, it's like you guys have done this before.
Also, Tom.
We're old hands.
Yeah.
All right, John, it's been really great talking to you.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you having me.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,